This episode of A Conversation with John Conenna is sponsored by Generate. In today's digital age, staying ahead means harnessing the power of generative AI. Wondering how your small or medium-sized business can join this revolution? Look no further than Generate, your strategic partner for integrating cutting-edge generative AI solutions. We create personalized plans, adapting existing AI technologies to fit your specific business needs. Plus, our expert team provides essential training, empowering you to make the most of these innovative technologies. Interested in transforming your business with AI? Reach out to us at generateteam@gmail.com. That's generate, GENERAIT, team@gmail.com. And now, on with the episode.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of A Conversation with John Conenna. Tonight, it truly brings me great pleasure to bring in longtime Illinois A-High referee for the sport that this gentleman loves and I love, the sport of hockey. And we are bringing in the longtime veteran referee, Terry McLoughlin, to talk about the game of when he got started and to the game of today. So before I bring him in, I had asked him a question before we went on live. How many years Terry has been doing this, Terry McLoughlin? And he gave me that figure of 51 years. Terry, thank you for coming in tonight to talk about this, a great career you've had, and you're still going at it. What is going on with you, young man? Tell me what it is all about right now.
Well, season 51 just ended for me. I'm going to do my last game on Sunday, just for the year. We got things going on. We own an RV, so as soon as this discussion's over, we're packing up and we're gone for the weekend. Just love most nights. It's a great deal of fun.
For sure.
And I keep coming back for more. We just got information. USA Hockey will open up registration again in July, and I will be upping for season 52.
So you are definitely planning for the 24-25 season.
I certainly am.
I had asked you that question before we came on, and I'll say it this way, and then you can get back to what you were telling me before we went on. How does it start for you in the sense of becoming the referee?
Well, I lived in Southern Ontario at the time, fairly rural community. There's nothing I can think of around here, but the building we played in was very much like Barrington Ice Rink or Carroll Stream, or like all small town rinks in Canada are or were at that time. Midgets went to 16. In 11th grade, I was a 16-year-old. We had a great team. We had a great season, went deep into the playoffs, and next year comes around, and midget hockey is done. There were a couple lower level junior teams in my area, and I don't know if I got a call from one of them, but I probably could have played on the local junior C team, maybe a fourth liner, and I just figured I didn't want to go through all that aggravation to play very little. And ironically, at that time in that area, and probably around here too, they didn't put the ice in until the end of October. Maybe, hockey didn't start.
Sure.
And high school football season was over, and I'm at home one night, and I get a call from the president of our local hockey association. He says, "Terry, can I interest you in refereeing?" And it kind of gobstopped me for a minute. And
Sure.
Well, what's the deal? He says, "Well, meet me at the rink at 6 o'clock or 4 o'clock Sunday afternoon, and we'll get you going." So he managed to convince a buddy of mine who played on the same team and was in the same situation. And he went out and skated with us for one or two games. And then every Sunday noon at 4, 5, and 6, we did the mite Mike House League
Oh,
for
wow.
the first winter, and that's how and it just kind of grew from there.
Terry, is this out of Hamilton, Ontario?
Well, when you're in Hamilton, if you go a little east, you get to Stony Creek. If you go a little east of that, you get to Salt Fleet Township,
Wow.
and it was barely a dot in the map,
Jeez. Incredible.
and it was a small town. And again, in Illinois hockey, we kind of have AAA, AA, and
Right.
NIHL. In Southern Ontario, there's just so many towns and so many villages. There are dozens of levels of play, AAA, AA, single B, double B, C, D, E,
Sure. Yeah.
all based on the size of the town.
Sure.
And you played in the rink that was closest to your town.
Closest to your town.
Yeah.
How old were you when you started this again?
I was a 17-year-old high school senior.
Wow. And this brings you to the point of you start there in Canada. How long did you do it for in Canada?
Well, when I was there, and again at that time it was local house league. It wasn't registered. It was just
Right.
they grabbed whoever they could get to do the game, and I guess I must have been half decent at what I was doing, and the next year I started some I got registered, did some local low level travel games, and then started doing older kids and more competitive kids. And by that time, I was in college, and I had got married shortly after, moved to the other end of town, and started refereeing with a bunch of different guys. Some of those guys worked junior, low level junior, the OHA,
Wow.
junior D, junior C, junior B,
Sure, sure.
and again, there was just all kinds of local teams around, and I started doing that, and I continued doing the local youth stuff, mostly the travel hockey, bantams, midgets, um, and filled my schedule in with junior games, and I did that until I moved here.
What year was it when you moved here to Illinois?
I moved here in '91.
91. Okay. Okay.
So
And,
I've seen a lot of growth in Illinois hockey since then.
oh my God, you are probably going to be the perfect guest to ask that question because I started coaching in 94. And I remember you, I think, pretty much from the get-go of my coaching career. When you got to Illinois, did you see a different brand of hockey and a different brand of the rules as the referee?
Well, the level of play was probably the same, but it wasn't as dense. Again, uh, in the city of Toronto, which is much like Chicago, in the 70s and 80s, they had a AAA league in the city.
Wow. Wow.
They had a junior B league in the city. And even, well, I guess my nephew's in his 30s now, but when he was a midget age kid, he played AAA hockey for the Hamilton, whatever they were called.
Sure.
Their greatest trip was an hour, except for once a year, they went down to Detroit, or not Detroit, they went to Windsor and Chatham, and that was it. So it was much that in Canada, the competition level is much higher and much in a much closer area than it is here.
Yeah.
And again, hockey in Illinois is pretty much Chicago based.
Chicago
There's
based, right?
Peoria and Pekin and some of that, but it's pretty much Chicagoland.
When you moved here in 91, did you want to get right into it to find out where some of the leagues were and what? Do you remember that first
I
start?
I did, and the guy that hired me and brought me in was a hockey nut. He was a big Blackhawks fan, and started talking. And one day I asked him, I says, where do they play hockey around here? And he lived in Schaumburg, and I was living in Hanover Park at the time. And he told me how to get to the Rolling Meadows rink,
Okay, the old Owl Rink.
the Owl on Owl Drive. Yeah.
Yes.
So one night I just got in the car and drove up there, and a Chargers midget team was playing. So I go into the office and I ask the guy, I says, who referees these guys? And then he called the coach in, and the coach gave me a guy's number. I phoned him. I was Don Olnuck, and he got me in touch with the registrar, and I registered and did the test and did all that stuff, and then just started refereeing.
Wow. So again, it was a pretty quick transition. You didn't wait long.
I jumped into it pretty quick because it was I guess when at the time I was 35, and I wanted to keep going. And, I kind of paid my dues for a couple of years. I did every JV game and in anywhere in Chicagoland, wherever they sent me,
Sure.
I went.
Sure.
And
I
at
think one
that
of the
time,
first times I met you was at the old Polar Dome. It could have been over there out in East Dundee or the old Polar.
Yes.
So
Metro Northwest.
Metro Northwest, yes, without
every Sunday from 2 in the afternoon until about 10 at night. They played there until they built
maybe the Crystal Lake, right?
I'm sorry, what?
Was it Crystal Lake then they built? I mean, after I think Santa's Village closed, but I mean, I remember that old Northwest.
I'm not sure when Crystal Lake was built, because that was kind of a little out of my range at the time.
Right.
And at that time, Crystal Lake and everything up north was kind of administered by another bunch of guys. It might have been guys out of Wisconsin that kind of had their finger in there.
Sure.
But the old Metro Northwest played at the Polar Dome until they built West Meadows, and then they played there every Wednesday and Sunday. So what I have noticed over time is the number of games that are played, and the length of the game. When I was here in the early 90s, the best league was Metro North, was the best high school league.
Yes.
They played 3 14-minute periods. They're now playing 3 17s with a flood and all that. So, games are longer. Probably the level of play at the highest level is pretty good. What I have noticed is at the youngest level, I am just amazed at the skill level of some 12 or 10, 11, and 12-year-olds and the things they can do with the puck. It just astounds me. Is it just kids are more talented now than they were years ago? I don't know. Is it coaching? Is it the amount of time they play? The amount of ice time they have? It's really interesting to see the level of skill at some of the younger kids.
Thank you for bringing that up, because I mean, if there's anybody that sees the game in a different way than the coach on the bench, it would be you. Because like you said, in 91, from let's say 91 to 2000, you saw a certain. So this game has evolved in your eyes. The game is faster. You see the more skill level, correct?
The game is faster. The kids are better. They shoot harder. Now that might be the composite sticks and stuff they're using, but I would say, a Central State's Bantam team of today was probably better than than some of those Chargers teams that went to nationals and stuff. It's just the skills. The skills are there. They have full rosters. I think nowadays teams are spending more touches or more hockey related events a week than they did years ago. Back when I first moved here, 91, 92, 93, the only real hockey around was Metro North played Wednesdays and Saturdays. Catholic League played Sundays afternoons. Metro Northwest played Wednesdays and Sundays. That was pretty much it. Now I can look out on the schedule on almost every night of the week, except Mondays. There's games out there.
So, Terry, basically, because I've been away from the game part of it, still being a member of AHI, but being away from the game part of it since about 2012. So a decade and 2 years has passed since I saw it. You see this game, so there's more on the schedule from that
Oh,
12 years ago.
oh, and every year, the schedulers say, yeah, we did 23,000 games last year. We did 24,000. We did 25,000. And there's just more and more. And there's more games because there's more teams. You know, back in that day and when you were with the Chargers, right?
Yes, Chargers and Conant.
Okay. So when you go back to those days, there were the Chargers, the Huskies, help me out here,
Yeah, the Bruins,
Skokie.
the Flames. Yeah, the
Yeah.
Flames, Downers,
And
the Huskies, yeah, like you said. Yes, yes, yes.
now with all the new rinks that there are, up at the north, there's Pleasant Prairie has two pads. You come a little south into the shopping mall. Gurney Mills has a rink that wasn't there in the 90s. West Meadows. There's now two pads in Glenview.
Right.
There's the rink in Northbrook, the new rink.
Yes, the new rink. Right.
The new rink there. Addison has two pads.
Yeah.
Rockford has another rink.
Another rink.
Arctic has three. Darien has three. And you can go on and on with all the growth.
Sure.
And they all bring teams with them that didn't exist. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, the Chicago Hawks didn't exist.
No.
Did the Vikings exist?
Yeah, they were out of Orland Park. Yeah.
No, they were out of Southwest Ice Arena.
Oh, Southwest, yeah.
And then they moved over to Arctic when Arctic went up.
Right.
But, back then there was just TI and CYA.
Sure.
This year, there's going to be 6 AAA organizations.
Now we have the Mission, the Fury. Yeah, there's so many of them. Sure.
Yeah, there's Mission, Fury, Reaper, TI. CYA morphed into Windy City, and then there's now going to be that new AAA team in Seven Bridges.
Well, I have to ask you, but I want to ask you a question before this, but I'm going to stick on this theme of yours. Do you feel, even though the game has changed with the speed and the shooting and the technique, but me being now the old coach who's away from the game, do you feel the game with all this that we've talked about and we've brought up about 14 organizations between the two of us, is this watered down?
Everybody, if you talk to everybody, they say, yeah, it is. And again, remember all those years ago, we had 2 AAA organizations. And back then, it was Squirt, Pee-wee, Bantam, and Midget.
Right.
There wasn't minors and majors, so it was very condensed. But the Hawks winning a couple of championships sure increased the interest in hockey. Sure. And all these new rinks. The one thing that is different that I see is over the years, coaching has become more professional. And by more professional, I mean there are a number of people making significant money coaching. Yes. And in some cases, there are full-time positions with some organizations to do some of the administrative stuff that the team mom used to do or whatever. Again, back in the era of the early 90s, Chicago teams didn't travel all over the place. The AAA teams did a little bit, but the Nihil teams, they played in Northern Illinois. Their big trip was to Rockford. Now, in Central States, they're going to St. Louis. They have their showcases that are a couple times a year that are all over the country. They're going to Minneapolis, Pittsburgh, sure. Dallas. There's just a lot more travel involved, I think. And it drives up the cost to the parents.
The cost of it. And a great point again by you, because now back in the day when we were just coming in, me and you in Illinois. Now we have hockey directors. We have hockey directors besides coaches that are making, from what I hear through the grapevine, some buku money.
Yeah, and to the same extent, in some rinks, I can think of a couple rinks. I expect to see certain people in rinks when I walk in. If I'm doing a Central States game, I can almost, in this rink, that rink, or another rink, I'm going to see the hockey director, or there will be people around that you always see in the rinks. So they're there.
For sure. For sure. Yeah.
And from that, what the biggest thing I see is the recruiting and the movement of players at the youth level.
At the youth level.
And when I was a kid, you played in the town that you lived in.
Exactly.
And when I moved here in the early 90s, the Nihil teams were, the Chargers had their kind of district, right?
Sure.
So if you lived in these neighborhoods or this general, you played for the Chargers. If you lived in Glen Ellen, you played for the Flames. If you lived in Downers Grove, you played for
the Huskies.
Yep. If you were in Naperville, you played for the Sabres.
Right.
Now, kids are moving all over the place.
It's incredible.
And,
it's amazing how they want to use their second and third choices nowadays, I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I don't see at that level of play why you would take a kid from Glenview and run them all the way down to Orland Park to play for the Vikings. It's just, what gives. And if you've got to take your kid that far to make the travel team, maybe there's something wrong with mom and dad there.
That's a story for another night, even back in the day. I do remember the beginnings of how I met you, and not only as the coach on the bench and you being the referee. You ran a thing that you would go to all the leagues. If it was Metro Northwest, Metro North, Metro West, you did a thing where you would meet with the coaches. It was set up by AHI, and you would meet with us, I think it was on Sundays or Mondays night, to tell you what to be aware of in a game, the respect factor, how you should act as a coach. And when I say that was 25 to almost 30 years ago, you were running that. Do you remember that? And how was that for you? That was a big thing for you, wasn't it?
I know what IHOA used to do is every board member, and I was on the board of IHOA for years, is every board member would be assigned a league. Yes. And because of where I lived, I said, I'll do the Northwest League. So I was kind of the liaison to that league. And we would sit in on your board meetings and, catch the different things back and forth. And it was the other part of that was a great opportunity. You get to meet people when they don't have the intensity of a game behind them. Because I've run into coaches, sometimes in social environments, sometimes even in the lobby in the rink. And, the most reasonable person in the lobby while you're having a coffee is the guy that is absolutely, screaming death threats at you on the ice. And then next day, if you see him in the Dunkin' Donuts, that's all forgotten.
Exactly.
So there's that part of it. So we got to humanize ourselves a little bit, and that's always fun.
That was a great thing, I thought, that brought a lot of respectability back at that time. Do you see, as much as we've talked about here in the beginnings here, that the game has changed? Do you see it change in the sense, in the way now, because I know with technology, we have cameras in the rink and everything else. Do you see the coach, more coaches being more respectful of their players and of the referee, Terry McLoughlin?
I don't know that there's the direct correlation of that, but the other side is the bad behavior is now documented. And, you can go back, look at the video. Live Barn is the one that does it. Some of them even have microphones that you can pick up
Sure.
the language and the bad actions. And I don't know that coaches are naturally playing to it or anything like that. But I think what's happening is it's far easier to hold them accountable. And, the suspension committee, well, you sit on that committee.
Yes.
Hey, this game, this time. Yeah, coach, you did cross the line. That was inappropriate. And some of that stuff. And some players have been held accountable for things that they've done that didn't get seen by a referee. Or the biggest thing that happened is if we do have a little brouhaha on the ice, say in a high school game, there's two guys out there. Well, yeah, do you either get involved and try and settle down the middle of the rhubarb, or do you stand back and watch what everybody's doing? And there are times, and I had a situation this year where I went back, sat here on a Monday morning, looked at it, wrote a report, says, we didn't see this on the ice when we were there, but you look at the live barn feed, and you clearly see that player in the scrum draw his stick back 24 inches and just drill a guy in the back of the knee with it.
Sure.
And they dealt with it.
Sure, exactly.
So
exactly.
From that point of view, I don't know that coaches, I think their intensity overrides the fact that they know it's up there, and they just get a little too involved.
I felt like 30 years ago when the coaching styles were pretty much, maybe correct me on this, you could say whatever on your bench even to get your team motivated. Do you notice the language has changed between player, coach, and referee?
My observation in the last several years, and I think zero tolerance has helped out, by and large, it's much better. Now, I'm saying that, and I'm not trying to put myself in a position that I'm the greatest referee in the world.
Got it.
But I've been around, and I think coaches recognize me and pretty much know where my line is. Or when they do get somebody credible, if they recognize the guy's credible, he kind of might get a pass from some of the verbal stuff. What really concerns me is things that some of the coaches say to the younger guys. And my observation is at the highest level, AAA, Central States, you don't get so much. I was in a rink watching a Nihil Bronze game before I went on the ice, and I couldn't believe what these coaches were doing. And that's probably the lower level of competitive hockey.
Right.
And these guys their expectations were, ludicrous.
Of what they were expecting of their teams, Terry?
No, what they were expecting from the officials, or not what they were expecting. It's just their interaction with the officials and how they just browbeat them and verbally got on them for nothing. And, I like to draw the parallel that, this level of hockey in the triangle of competition,
sure,
you're kind of a little closer to the bottom. You're probably going to get referees whose talents and abilities are a little closer to the bottom.
Right.
So, you gotta work with what you get. And in terms of how coaches interact with their players, I still see wide chasms of how coaches act. Some of them, a player misses a pass and, can throw a coach into a tirade, or, quote unquote, get that retard off the ice. you
Right.
know, is some of it. And that kind of stuff. I heard that comment one night, and I kind of made a point of saying to the coach that that's just
Yeah. You've gone
that's
over
just
the
not,
line here now a little bit.
you've crossed the line with your own players.
Sure.
So that that exists. I've had, and I'll make a comment at the different levels of refereeing I've done all the through my career.
Sure.
And I'll ask you a question.
Sure.
What do you think is the easiest level of hockey to referee?
The easiest level of hockey to referee, I would have to say, after all these years, I'm going to say the midget level.
Well, kind of close. I'm going to say AAA hockey is the easiest thing in the
Okay.
world to referee, or your top high school teams, because they're good.
Right.
They know what an offside is. They're not going to hammer the puck down and ice it. They bank it off the boards. They try and do this. And they kind of have a general sense of what's acceptable.
Sure. Sure. Okay.
And you can just play. And at that level of competition and general respect of the players amongst themselves, it gives you the ability to ease the reins off a little bit. Because if two guys are giving each other business and you bark at them, they might look at, oh, okay, and away we go. At some of the lower levels of competition where the players aren't quite as mature, that bark does nothing. And they each give each other another shot, and you end up with two guys in the box.
Right.
So,
Right. Great,
you know,
great
as a
perspective
referee,
because
I've always tried to talk players out of getting penalties. And if you see them, you know, if there's a scrum in front of the net, you say, you know, defenseman's number 7, hey, 7, get that stick out of his back.
got
And every now and then, they, oh, jeez, he saw that.
it. Yeah.
And as long as if it's in that gray area, we move on.
Sure.
But, you know, you don't see the silly things at the highest level.
Sure.
A while back, I was doing a lower level JV game, and I hear this kid going up the ice, clunk, 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 clunk. What in the world is going on? So I look down. He's wearing goalie skates. Well, you can't wear goalie skates.
You know.
And you know, that kind of stuff. The weird stuff that is buried deep in the rule book always happens in these less competitive games. You know, now AAA team comes into town. You know, they've got a goaltender. There's no way they're going to take a goaltender and let them play forward. So you don't see that. So and at the higher levels of play, I think the players have and the coaching staff know when you make a mistake, and you can't get away with it.
Got it.
When you're doing your middle of the road, mid competition, you know, players are getting tripped, players fall down, bada bing,
Sure.
bada boom, bada bing. At the very highest level, they don't fall down. And at the very highest level, what might be two guys going into the boards heavy is acceptable. But you take that down in a less competitive, less skilled level, that's a boarding penalty because the one guy just doesn't know how to protect himself.
Sure.
As they get to be better players, they know how to protect themselves. So it's just a big bang and everybody skates on. So it's and that's and one of the real challenges for all of us that work a lot of games is what age level we're dealing with and what level of competition. And your 3 o'clock game might be one, and your 4:45 game is diametrically opposite, and you got to
Exactly.
change gears that quickly. So it's and a perfect example of that. One of my hockey tournaments, or one of the professional tournament companies, had something, and I had a double header that was an 18U game followed by an 8U game. And I'm going out there and oh, I can't fall on one of these kids because if I fall on one of them, there'll just be a spot in the ice.
Yeah, right.
And then an hour before, I was dealing with 6'3" guys running
Right.
220 and shooting 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, motoring down the ice. Yeah.
Yeah. So working back and forth with that is a challenge.
Oh, sure.
So doing the different levels, and USA Hockey does us no favors when they have youth rules and high school rules, and they can't marry them up.
And it's a lot to keep about. I thank you for bringing up the fact about, that there's a flow to the game when it's that AAA and that midget, that experienced player. You see more of the flow. You got to be on your game, Terry McLoughlin, and they are on their game for sure. I'm going to ask you a question before.
Let me finish my point off on this. And
sure.
Years and years ago, when I was much younger and there was less gray, I'm doing a AAA. I'm refereeing a AAA game. Play goes down at one end, and these two really aggressive guys, pucks in the corner, they both go in. The boards do this. One guy looks at the other, gives him a shot. The other guy looks and gives him a shot back. And I look back, and then they both went, I got to be someplace else. And rather than carrying on the scrum that they had, they just both knew, I got a job I got to do down at the other end of the ice, and off they went. And it was kind of like, okay, you guys understand that if you do that, I don't have to do anything. And if you continue to do it that way, I can do it this way. But if you got to get the third and the fourth and the fifth shot in on each other, you make it pretty difficult for me to keep things moving here. Because nobody wants to see penalties called and a game with 2.5 pages of penalties when they can sit and watch play go end to end and back and forth. And you mentioned about what's changed in the game. We will have at all levels of hockey. You see it on TV. You see it in kids' games, and we talk about it in the locker room. Yeah, I dropped the puck, and there was 15 minutes on the clock, and our first face-off was 7:12 on the clock. So we ran off 7 minutes of back and forth. And back in the day, you didn't see that quite as much.
Exactly. Wow.
So that's one of the things that have changed is the continuity of play.
The continuity of play. Very, very. Thank you again for bringing that point into it. I have to ask you. We'll just go from the Illinois, and then I'm going to do a thing of 5 questions with you tonight before you leave. But the last thing I want to ask you, because it always comes up, especially now being on a review suspension board for AI myself. How does Terry McLoughlin? I know he's got to watch the game, but do you see Terry McLoughlin has the parent changed from 1991 to now, or is the parent still have the rose-colored glasses on and the blinders? I used to say.
The parents, you mean of the players?
Of the players, yes, sir.
Well, they all have a much bigger investment in the game now.
Yes.
Because hockey is just so expensive. I watch games back and forth, and my favorite, I always arrive at the rink early, and my favorite spot to stand and watch a game is right in the corner because you can see everything.
Yes.
And you listen to stuff and you can see, I'll use the inappropriate term, you see the idiot dad. Yeah. That he's standing now, and he's, every time something happens, he puts his arm in the air and has some comment or whatever. And I saw a very interesting thing in AAA playoffs a couple of years ago. The Chicago teams, of course, AAA teams, they play each other a lot, and there's a lot of player movements among the teams. So the AAA community pretty much knows each other pretty well. I go in and I see, 3 or 4 dads standing there. Maybe there was 4, 5 or 6, and 3 of them got red jackets and 3 of them got blue jackets, and they're actually standing there talking while the game is going on, and they're watching the game back and forth, and they've watched the game for so long they know what's going on. And I will say bantam and midget and maybe high school parents are more educated. They've been watching hockey, and their kids play hockey for maybe up to 10 years now.
Sure.
They understand a little bit. So you've got, a high school mother understands the concepts of offsides and icings, and they watch the game accordingly. At the younger levels, I think parents maybe are a little more emotional and not quite as well. They're not as they're far more educated in the game itself. They understand a breakout play, and at the better levels, penalties called, and they just kind of stand there. Yeah, he hooked them, and they understand that.
Got it. So the parent, what I'm getting out of this has become a little bit more educated than just the guesser and saying that, oh, I could do this better than the coach, the player, or the referee himself.
Yeah. And you hear that parent every now and then. Why is he playing this kid? You can hear some of that
Yes.
in the rink. But a lot of it, John, we've got that sheet of glass that goes up 10 feet. And a lot of the stuff I really don't hear, or after all this time, I can filter out what I don't need to, and I don't even hear it.
Hear it, yeah. So, I mean, you're concentrating on the game.
Yeah.
You are.
I got enough stuff to worry about. Yes. You guys do what you want up there.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I want to tell our audience here, because we're coming close to the end. We are visiting with one of the best referees in Illinois from the day I met him, Terry McLoughlin, who's had a career of over 51 years from his days in Canada, from Hamilton, Ontario to Illinois. And it's been a great pleasure to have him on here tonight. Terry, I got 5 questions for you, and then I'm going to say something to you at the end. But I
got a John Conenna story for the fans.
Oh, great. Too. You can bring that up at the end for sure.
I will.
Okay. All right. We're going to play a game of 5 questions, and 1-word answers, 1 sentence. Who's that early mentor, Terry, in your life in regards to roughing that you still run, early mentors that made you really have a passion for this like you do?
I had the ability or the advantage of working up and working some low-level juniors in Canada. And there were guys that mean nothing to anybody here but Bob Morley and George Graham and Bob Lewis and a whole bunch of guys. And what I tried to do, and I was a linesman a lot of times in these junior games, and these guys were experienced referees, is I tried to pick what I liked out of each one of their games.
Oh, wow.
And take that part of their game. One guy was the iron-fisted policeman. The rule is the rule, and he called a very tight ship. There was another guy that had a great demeanor with coaches, and where other guys would have launched him out of the game, he manages to get him to go stand at the end of the bench and be quiet. Other guys were just phenomenal skaters, and that was something I wasn't going to emulate any pretty skating, that's for sure. But I tried to pick a bunch of guys and pick out what they do well and work that into my game.
There you go. It's very nice. Very nice. All right. A movie that you can watch over 200 times, your favorite movie, and not get bored.
Well, for hockey fans,
I'll give you 1 or 2, Terry.
I will watch Slapshot anytime.
Oh, that's a great one. Yeah, that's
a little story about that. It was on commercial TV one time, and I'm watching it, and I got about 15 minutes into it, and I just turned it off because it was so censored. It just lost its humor. And I'm squawking to my wife, and I went out the next day doing a game. She'd come out and do some shopping. Guess what was sitting on the counter? Slapshot.
Slapshot.
So someplace down in the cabinet, there's a copy of Slapshot, and that's my go-to. And ironically, an acquaintance of mine, guy I worked with years ago, played in that league in the early 60s.
The Federal League.
The Federal League.
Yes.
And he said that was pretty much how it went.
Wow.
You know,
Incredible.
now some of the stuff where they strip on the ice, he says,
Yeah,
that was a little artistic license. He says, but we go to practice at 10 in the morning. At 1 in the afternoon, we'd be sitting in the bar and somebody would come in and buy us drinks and this and that and the other thing. And we'd go on a bus trip. Well, we always left on a road trip after a home game. So we get in the bus and we'd ride all night. And we get to the next town about noon. Well, we'd go to the rink, have a little skate, and hang around the rink. Then we get back on the bus and drive all night to the next place.
wow.
And they'd never stay in a hotel. And they'd
Sure.
just sit up in the bus and drink beer all night. And then when the expansion came in 67, 68, he didn't get any promotions or move up at all. So he got a real job.
Okay, no, that's great to know that you. All right, I'm doing the interviewing tonight. And if you could interview someone, could be a man or woman, the only thing I know your answer, and you're going to have to think about this because I already know your answer. It can't be me because I know you want to interview me. Who would it be, man or woman?
There's several people I would like to sit and talk with. One of them is I'd like to sit around a table and have a couple beers with Gretzky and his crew.
Wow.
Because anytime and one of the greatest stories with Gretzky is he was the ESPN analyst or something last year in the playoffs.
Yes.
And one game went into multiple overtimes, and it was just going on and on. And, the professional analysts are going over it. And, oh, yeah, this is going to happen. And Gretzky sits there and he says, I just want somebody to score a goal.
Right.
And he says, nobody on the ice wants to play 4 overtimes,
Exactly.
And my personal feeling on overtime is, if you're going to score in overtime, score in the first shift. And if you score in the first shift, why didn't you score in the last shift of the regular time?
Right. So Gretzky's your guy in the interview.
I'm sorry, say what?
Gretzky would be your guy.
Yeah, he'd be my hockey guy for sure.
Good guy. Great, good one. All right. What's that go-to meal made by your wife or that go-to meal that you want to go to a restaurant? What's Terry McLaughlin's go-to meal, his favorite?
My go-to meal is a flank steak on my smoker.
Oh, nice.
And it just can't be beat. If I take one of them I could take that out of the freezer 3 nights in a row, and my wife would say, oh yeah, that's good. If I go to a restaurant, I never order a steak because steak on my grill is just phenomenal.
Exactly.
And if we go to a restaurant, I like Italian. So, a nice mom and pa Italian place is good too.
Italian place. I have to tell you, 51 years and your consistency in the game and the respect that people look up to you and everything else has been fantastic. But the last question is this. You're not retiring anytime soon, are you?
Well, you asked the question of what leads to a long career. Fortunately, I heal well. I've had surgery on both my knees.
Okay.
The most difficult thing for me on the ice is bending over and picking up the puck. I just got no flexibility in my back anymore. But I just keep on going. I intend to go until I can officiate at a level of competition that piques my interest.
Great, fantastic.
Now, years ago, that was AAA midgets. I don't skate as well. And quite frankly, the game has changed. The game has been so much faster. And the NHL went to 4 referees for 2 reasons. One reason was they weren't developing referees quickly enough, and there were a whole bunch of guys that added a few years to their careers to help the new guys come on.
Sure.
There's nobody in the NHL that can skate 80 games a year as a referee. One guy.
Right.
Game's just too fast. They can't do it.
It is too fast.
Yeah.
Well, I am going to leave it like this, and then I'll let you say your John Conenna story if you want to, but I'm going to leave it like this. Since the day I met you, that main word for you, Terry, has been you've been consistent. You've always set the tone kind of before that game started. When you came over to both benches, the visiting coach and the home coach, you were always fair, respectful. You were the judge in that game, and I wanted to respect you as the coach, and my players wanted to respect you. That was the main thing. I go, because I always hated when a parent would say, oh, this ref is out to get us, or this ref is out to get us. No
we
ref.
don't get paid more.
Yeah, no ref is out to get you. Terry, I hope you can ref as long. I want you to ref as long as you want to, because you've been truly the model referee here in Illinois, and I thank you.
And hopefully that trait that you just said is what's allowed me to go on as long as I have. Now, I've got a John Conenna story.
Okay.
You're behind the Conant bench one night, and the players don't sit on the bench very often. They usually stand at the edge, or they got their butt cheeks on the edge, and there's enough room for the coach to stand up on the bench. And it's late in the third period. It's a really close game, and John's standing on one end of the bench, and there was only two referees. I was the back referee closest to the bench, and a Conant kid gets a breakaway. Well, John starts cheering for this kid and running up the bench all the way until he ran out of bench. And it was just John's running and running and running, and he's off the end of the bench and bangs into the glass of the penalty box. And I almost lost it, because he's yelling at go Jimmy, go, go, go. And he's running along, and all of a sudden the bench disappears. He goes down like a sniper got him. And the officials generally have a code that says if you go down, you're usually due to buy a round of beverages post game. And I think you still owe me that one.
No, I do remember the night, because I was pretty sore for about a week.
Did the kid score?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Well, it doesn't hurt as much, does it?
Matter of fact, I remember it. It was Mike Raporto, a player who played for me at Conant, and I wound up getting a drink of water, pretending that I wasn't hurt. But Terry, that's a great memory, because that's a story that comes up here all the time.
And I think Raporto, he went on to play at Robert Morris, didn't he?
He went on to go play at Northern Illinois and became the captain. Yes.
Okay, that's where I saw the voice, because we used to go down to down to Champaign to do their games, and that was always fun.
That thrills me that you remember that story. An amazing night in the West Meadows Arena, I think it was. Yes.
Yeah, that was I'm sitting up there. This is a 2-2 hockey game, a minute left, and I'm on my knees laughing because John had run out of bench and smacked into the penalty box.
Oh, geez.
Mean Gene, the scorekeeper, who got
Gene
a shot
Gorman.
that night. Yep,
Gene Gorman. Terry, I want to thank you for tonight, and I think we just scratched the surface. I hope we can come back for a part 2.
Okay. Thanks a lot, John.
You got it. Take care, and we'll talk soon.
You bet.
Good night.
Good night.